Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, another news and rumor video. In today's video, we're looking at some signings from our past couple of days, a couple of pieces of news, and we got some trade rumors involving the Rangers, Kraken, Oilers, and a couple of other teams. We'll go to all the updates from our past couple of days coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this to all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming out in the very near future. So in today's video, as usual, we'll start off by looking at some signings from our past couple of days. There were 15 signings from the 15th to the 16th, so we're going to touch on all these signings here and just going to try and get through these quickly. So first in Buffalo, 8th overall pick from the 2025 draft, Mrtka has signed his ELC with the Sabres. 3-year deal, $975,000 AAV. Solid pickup there for Buffalo. Mrtka is not making the NHL roster this year, but either next off season or the following season, he could wind up making the NHL roster. I think in the next year or two, Mrtka will be a very solid top 4 right shot defenseman for the Buffalo Sabres. So again, on his ELC is great, and whether that's next year or the year after, I think he will be a solid pickup here for the Sabres long term. So solid pickup here for Buffalo. Then we saw Boston Bruins sign RFA forward John Farinacci. Farinacci, who was the Arizona Coyotes draft pick, left as a UFA, signed in Boston, is now an RFA. He signs in Boston again, 1-year league minimum deal. Farinacci, I do think long term has the potential to be a solid bomb 6 forward. Probably more of an AHL level guy at this point in time, but still an interesting lower end sign there for the Bruins as he signed one of the former picks of the Arizona Coyotes and Farinacci to a 1-year league minimum deal. Then we saw Winnipeg Jets sign Terrell Bauer, 23-year-old right shot defenseman, another RFA guy, 1-year league minimum deal. Bauer's an AHL level guy at best at this point in time, could be a call-up option, but still I think this is more of an AHL level sign there for the Jets, so just some add depth on the forward group. Interesting note there for the Winnipeg Jets. Then we saw Toronto Maple Leafs sign 5th round pick from the 2024 draft, Miroslav Holinka, who's a 19-year-old center prospect with a 3-year ELC AAV of $918,000. Holinka looks like eventually could be a solid 3rd, 4th line center. Once again, a guy's probably going to need a couple of years of development time, so probably won't be ready to the NHL until 2 to 3 years from now. But I do think long term he could be a solid bomb 6 center, so a solid pickup here for the Leafs. The Chicago Blackhawks gave an ELC to the 3rd overall pick from the 2025 draft, and that's Anton Frondell. Frondell, 3 years, $975,000 ELC. Once again, another one of the top 10 picks from this past year's draft, signs an ELC. I think there's a slim outside chance Frondell could make the NHL team this year if he has a good enough training camp. I think most likely he'll go back over in Europe, play I think in the SHL or Svenskan where he was playing last year, and then next year he'll be able to make the NHL roster as like a top 9 forward. So I'm not sure if Frondell will make it this year or next year, but either way, whenever he does, he'll be a solid powerhouse of a center for the Chicago Blackhawks. So very interesting note there, but the Hawks did sign Frondell. The Utah Mammoth are bringing back Michael Carcioni, who was a UFA, 29-year-old center / right winger, signs a 1-year deal, league minimum. Carcioni will just add some more forward depth for the Utah Mammoth. Was a decent penalty killing bomb 6 forward last year, but the Utah Mammoth have upgraded their forward group this year. So I definitely do think there's a likely possibility that Carcioni will most likely be like a 13th, 14th forward this year for Utah consistently, but they're some injuries, could easily be a bomb 6 guy. So a solid pickup here for Utah as they bring back Carcioni. We saw the Anaheim Ducks and a couple of lower end guys to new deals. That's Jan Mysak and Kalle Kling. Both are 23 years old. Mysak a center prospect, Kling a goaltender. Both get 1-year league minimum deals. Kling I do think could be a solid 3rd, 4th stringer this year for the Anaheim Ducks. Long term has the potential to be a solid backup, while Mysak I think is more of an AHL level guy this year, could be a call-up option, but long term I think has the potential to be a solid bomb 6 forward. So very interesting note there, but some more AHL level guys who have the potential to eventually be NHL level guys, and Kling and Mysak have signed new deals in Anaheim. The Montreal Canadiens brought in one of the top UFAs remaining on the UFA markets, and that is Joe Veleno, the former 1st round pick of the Red Wings, who was dealt last year in Chicago, dealt in the offseason to Seattle, bought out by Seattle, sends a 1-year $900,000 deal in Montreal. So a very interesting pickup here for the Habs. Veleno I think could be a really solid like bomb 6 guy in the Montreal Canadiens organization organization. Wouldn't be surprised if he was more of an AHL level guy or a spare forward, but I definitely do think he could be a decent bottom six guy in the Montreal Canadiens organization. So solid pickup here for the Habs. We saw the Carolina Hurricanes sign Dominic Fensor. Fensor is 23 years old, defensive prospect, lower end guy in the AHL who I think eventually could be a solid third pair defenseman. Gets a 1 year league minimum deal once again. Lower end prospect. I do think Fensor eventually could be a solid third pair guy. He winds up signing a 1 year deal to remain in the Carolina Hurricanes organization. So once again, just some more added defensive depth, but a guy who I do think long term could wind up being a solid pickup here for the Hurricanes. Then we saw Utah Mammoth, some of their RFAs in Cameron Hebig. It's a 2 year deal, AAV of $725,000. It'll be a UFA. When the contract ends, Hebig's an AHL level guy. Could potentially be a call-up option, but mostly an AHL level player. So some more added AHL depth for Utah as they get Hebig. Buffalo signs UFA forward Jake Leschyshyn, who spent last year in New York and also over the past couple of years in Vegas. Signs a 1 year league minimum deal in Buffalo. So Leschyshyn's, he gave me a solid 13th, 14th forward. Wouldn't be surprised if he got AHL level minutes. Also wouldn't be surprised if he was able to carve out a role on the fourth line for the Buffalo Sabres. So we shall wait and see on that. Just some added forward depth there for the Buffalo Sabres as they're able to sign Jake Leschyshyn. Then we saw Columbus Blue Jackets sign UFA forward Dyson Mayo. Mayo is a 1 year deal, AAV of $775,000. He's 28 years old, defensive player, mostly AHL level guy, has been over the past couple of seasons, has had some slim stints at the NHL level with guys like Vegas and Arizona, but he's mostly AHL level guy, so I definitely think Mayo will start at AHL level, potentially be a call-up option, but a solid depth defensive signing here from the Columbus Blue Jackets. We saw Chicago Blackhawks sign Stanislav Berezhnoi to a 2 year ELC with AAV of $975,000. Berezhnoi is a goaltending prospect, one of the older prospects for the Chicago Blackhawks. I think he was playing over in the KHL, so he comes over. Might eventually be able to be a backup, but this upcoming season will probably be more of an AHL level guy. So very interesting note there, but Berezhnoi has signed a new deal in the Chicago Blackhawks organization as an ELC. And then we saw the Detroit Red Wings sign another first round pick from the 2025 draft, and that is Carter Bear. Bear, who was taken 13th overall by Detroit, signed a 3 year ELC, $975,000. Bear, once again, most likely not going to make the NHL level this year. Could be a guy who makes it next year or the year after. Probably going to need a couple of years of development time, but I do think long term Bear has the potential to be a solid middle six, center, winger, whatever he winds up being. So very interesting note there, but the Detroit Red Wings have signed Carter Bear to a new ELC. So very interesting note there, but those are all signs from the past couple of days. We saw a number of guys get their ELCs, including first round picks from 2025, like Mrtka, Bear, and Frondell. We saw some lower end UFAs get signed, like Mayo, like Garchoni, like Veleno, and we saw some other lower end AHL level guys get signed. So very interesting note there, but some very interesting signs from our past couple of days. Next one, over to a couple of news updates. First one comes to the San Jose Sharks. Recently, over the past couple of days, we've heard that Joe Thornton has been hired as a player development coach. So a very interesting hire there for the Sharks. Thornton is a long-time San Jose Sharks player. I think he had a similar role over the past couple of seasons, but he's now been promoted to a full-time player development coach. So it's a solid pickup there for the Sharks. I definitely do think Thornton will thrive in that role and be able to help the Sharks find the next generation of Sharks level players. So very interesting note there, but a solid hire there in my opinion from the Sharks as they hired Joe Thornton as development coach. Next, going over to the Vegas Golden Knights. According to, I think it was David Pagnotta, it might have been somewhere else. There's been no real new updates when it comes to Jack Eichel. The contract talks continue. There's nothing to indicate that they're close on an extension. So very interesting note there. Last time we talked, we said the Golden Knights and Eichel had started to talk about contract extension. Seems like nothing's really materialized so far. So very interesting note there, but we shall continue to keep our eye on Jack Eichel as he continues to try and work out a new contract extension with the Vegas Golden Knights. Next, going over to Klim Kostin. He has apparently switched agents. So Kostin is currently UFA, was not qualified by the San Jose Sharks, wound up hitting the free agent market, is one of the few UFAs who's NHL caliber talent who's still unsigned at this point, is still waiting for new contracts, so he switched agents. There's some talk out there that if Kostin isn't able to get an NHL level opportunity, that he might go back over to the KHL, so we shall wait and see on that. But after not getting very much opportunities at this point in time in free agency, Kostin has switched agents, and we shall see what happens in the very near future when it comes to Klim Kostin. We also have a couple of contracts that have been terminated. Yanni Jurmo, who was a third round pick, I think back in a couple of years ago from Vancouver, was traded in the Elias Lindholm deal to Calgary, has officially had his contract terminated. He was placed on unconditional waivers, and the team and the player have mutually agreed to terminate his contract. contract, so expect Jurmo to go overseas, get some more opportunities there. But after what was apparently not an overly great fit in Calgary, Jurmo has officially terminated his contract, as has Voit in Toronto. One of the latest former draft picks from over the past couple of seasons, and Voit has had some opportunities that they think of the AHL level, but mostly players have been playing over in Europe, isn't getting his opportunities that he wants to, so him and the Leafs have mutually agreed to terminate his contract, and Voit is probably going to go back overseas too. So very interesting note there, but some of the lower end prospects in the Flames and Leafs organizations in Jurmo and Voit have both had their contracts terminated, and I'll probably go overseas, so very interesting note there. And then Sam Knazko, who was a prospect in the Columbus Blue Jackets organization, did not sign with the Blue Jackets, wasn't qualified, hit the UFA market, has apparently just signed over in Czechia, so very interesting note there. So he's going over to the Czech League, and he'll hopefully get some more opportunities there. But after not getting very much NHL opportunities, getting limited AHL opportunities, Knazko has headed back to Europe, so very interesting note there. But those are all the updates from our past couple of days. As Thornton has been hired as a player development coach, there are no real new updates when it comes to the Jack Eichel situation. Kostin switches agents. Jurmo and Voit have had their contracts terminated, and Knazko sends over in Czechia, so very interesting note there. And lastly here, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So going over to a couple of trade rumors, we've got a couple of trade rumors here to talk about. First, when it comes to the Columbus Blue Jackets, according to Aaron Portzline, who covers the Blue Jackets who think for The Athletic, he was recently talking about the Jackets goaltending. Now we talked about their goaltending entering the offseason, about how there's a lot of speculation. The Jackets really wanted to try and go in a different direction with their goaltending. They did move Daniil Tarasov to Florida for a 5th round pick, but besides that, they haven't really done much when it comes to their goaltending. At this point in time, they're currently projected to have Merzlikins-Greaves as their 1-2 punch in the net going into this upcoming season. But according to Portzline, the Jackets are still looking for an NHL caliber goaltender, and I'm not sure if that would be like a backup to Merzlikins to try and replace Greaves, or if that'd be like trying to find a home for Merzlikins to try and go after someone. So I'm not exactly sure what sort of a deal the Jackets could be looking for out there, but we know that the Jackets didn't have the greatest of goaltendings last year. Merzlikins wasn't overly great, and Greaves, Tarasov, they didn't really do overly good until Greaves' late stint at the NHL level, where he completely took over for the Blue Jackets. So maybe they do run with the Greaves Merzlikins tandem. That's a possibility. Maybe Merzlikins bounces back. Maybe Greaves can go on a stretch like he did late last season. We will have to wait and see. But according to Portzline, the Jackets are still in the market for a goaltender, and if they find some way to upgrade their goaltending that they currently have, we could see a goaltending trade from the Blue Jackets. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to David Pagnotta, he mentioned Jared McCann again. He says the McCann's name is still out there, has been out there since the trade deadline this past season, and the Kraken are open to moving him for the right price. So at this point, with all the insiders saying it, it seems very likely like McCann could wind up getting dealt in the very near future. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Like, I'm not saying it's a guarantee McCann will get dealt. He's been one of the best, if not the best Seattle Kraken player since the expansion draft. He's probably the closest thing that the Kraken team has to a face of a franchise. So trading him will be quite surprising. But if they really don't feel like this team's a playoff caliber team, and if they don't really feel like McCann's going to extend beyond next offseason, like not this upcoming offseason, but the one afterwards, then maybe it makes sense to trade McCann. Like, I think if they were to trade McCann, they'd have to get 1st round pick, solid prospect, maybe NHL level player. Not exactly sure, so we'll have to wait and see on that. But very interesting note there that McCann is still very likely to get dealt by the Seattle Kraken, so I'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to Jeff Marek, he mentioned a couple of things. First, he just put this out there saying that Panarin will be a very interesting thing to watch out for. No rumors or anything mentioning things that could be happening with Artemi Panarin, but it does say that Panarin is a very interesting option to look out for. Like, he's entering finally his deal, so Panarin next year will be a UFA. Do the Rangers wind up keeping Panarin? Do they sign him to an extension? Probably would be like a 2 to 4 year deal. Do they let him walk as UFA? If they're not doing overly good at the trade deadline, is there a possibility they could try and trade Panarin before this year's trade deadline? Like, I'm not exactly sure. Like, I've heard lots about Kaprizov extensions and Eichel extensions and McDavid extensions, but I haven't heard a whole bunch about Panarin's extensions entering the final year of his deal. So it's going to be a very interesting situation to watch out for in the New York organization this upcoming season, because there's a lot of potential options when it comes to Artemi Panarin. So we'll have to keep our eye on Panarin going forward, but definitely keep your eye on Panarin, as there's a possibility there could be some movement on him, whether it be an extension or being dealt at some point during this season. So I'm definitely going to be keeping tabs on Panarin as a potential trade target, as well as a potential signing option. So keep your eye on Artemi Panarin. Next, going over to Nick Kyperos, he mentions that Nazem Kadri, he apparently thinks, will be open to waiving his no movement clause to go to either Toronto or Montreal. So very interesting note there for a lot about Nazem Kadri Toronto rumors over the past couple of weeks. I don't think it'll happen in the offseason. I think that's not going to be anywhere that happens in the offseason. But the Leafs really do feel like they still need a second line center, and they're closing on the trade deadline. I could see him try and inquire about acquiring Nazem Kadri from Calgary. On top of that, Montreal, they've been looking for a second line center. Kadri's a second line center. Like, I think that's sort of an under the radar, really good potential ad there for the Habs. I talked about McTavish recently. There's also been some talk about Rossi, but Kadri could really fit really well in the second line, playing with guys like Demidov, Newhook, Doc. Like, there would be a really solid upgrade there for the Habs, and the Habs will have the assets the Flames will want. So we've already heard that Kadri's not up for trade at this point in time. The Flames probably want to go into the season with where they are at this point in time with minimal subtractions. But if they get a closer trade deadline, I could see them potentially consider a Nazem Kadri move for the right deal. And I could see Montreal and Toronto potentially be a landing spot, so we'll have to wait and see on that. But keep your eye on Nazem Kadri. Apparently, according to Nick Kyperos, he would waive his no movement clause to go to either the Montreal Canadiens or the Toronto Maple Leafs, and those two teams both need second line center upgrades, so we shall wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to the Edmonton Oilers. According to Jeff Marek, he's been mentioning on his radio hits recently about the Edmonton Oilers. He mentions Tristan Jarry as Michael DiPietro and has linked them to the Edmonton Oilers. In Jarry's case, he says that if there's enough retention on the Penguins side and the Oilers are able to make it work cap-wise, he could see the Oilers and Penguins make some sort of a deal for Tristan Jarry. It would be able to get Jarry off the books for the Pittsburgh Penguins for the most part, besides the retention they would have to make. I don't think it would take too much to acquire him from Edmonton's side. The big question is, would Jarry be much of an upgrade on a guy like Stuart Skinner and Alvin Pickard? At this point, I'm going to say probably not. But still, I've heard a couple of people say, especially Marek, that Jarry and Edmonton could be a good fit, so we shall wait and see on that. When he mentioned Michael DiPietro, he says that DiPietro's in a similar situation to Arthur Seelovs. Like, the Bruins are going to have Korpisalo and Swayman next year. They're not going to have enough room for DiPietro, and DiPietro actually had a pretty good season last year at the AHL level. He's making a cheap money, so with that in mind, Marek does wonder if, whether it be off of waivers or in a small trade, he wonders if the Oilers could try and target a guy like DiPietro to be a sort of maybe backup to Stuart Skinner. I still have my concerns about DiPietro being a full-time backup. Like, he never really worked out in the Canucks organization. That's why they moved into Boston, and he hasn't really got much opportunity at the NHL level in Boston. So he had some really good AHL seasons, don't get me wrong, but I'm just not completely convinced that he's an NHL level goaltender. So we shall wait and see on this, but Marek does wonder and speculate if Edmonton could try and target Jarry or DiPietro, whether it be trade market, waivers, things like that. So we'll have to wait and see on those two guys. Personally, I think DiPietro is a little more likely than Jarry just because of the contract, but I don't think either one of those guys are probably much of an upgrade on Calvin Pickard. So we shall wait and see on that, but keep your eye on Jarry and DiPietro, as if the Oilers were to try and get some more goalie upgrades, those would be the two guys to do so. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But that's what I'm going to talk for today. I left you guys' thoughts down in the comment section below over your opinion on all of this. Do you think the Oilers could go after Jarry or DiPietro? Could Kadri waive his no movement clause to go to Montreal or Toronto? What happens with Artemi Panarin? Does McCann get moved by the Seattle Kraken? And could the Jackets try out a goaltender? Definitely thoughts all of that, plus the news updates and the signings from our past couple of days. That is all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video. If you're listening, subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this with all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming on in the very near future. Also a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis. So if that's going to check that out, I'll link to that in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.